planets revolve around the sun, sort of like the hands of a clock, always moving forward. Tick follows tock follows tick. This here clock has been one that we've had in the family for about 50 years now. For most of the time, it's like this. The hands of the clock aren't moving forward, it isn't ticking. But sometimes at night, for whatever reason, the clock begins to tick again, and the hands do indeed move forward. Now, scientists have a lot of theories about how time works. Scientists like Isaac Newton believe that time is sort of like a straight line, that our fates are predetermined and we have no power over our destiny, while scientists like Einstein believe that time is relative, that it can branch. But what most scientists agree upon is that we can't go back in time, we can only move forward. Well, at least, this seems to be the case most of the time. But sometimes, in our universe, for no explicable reason, we are indeed able to move the hands of the clock back. Tonight, I will be telling you of one such occurrence. It occurred to two scientists by the name of Eccentric and Allen. Now, Eccentric and Allen were two of the greatest scientists to ever live. And ever since they were boys, they were obsessed with the sky. They came from that age when the sky was still a place of mystery, where it still held a sense of wonder. And the two boys immediately became interested in science, and they were always coming up with flying devices, and you could always find them out in the college park, flying their kites, or trying to make their own airplanes. Well, anyways, eventually the U.S. government, they decided to work with them, and Eccentric and Allen had a plan for an airplane that could fly quieter and faster than any airplane that had been made before. And the government finally agreed to fund the experiment. So anyways, the two men were kind of not well off, and this experiment counted a lot for them. If the experiment failed, they were going to be without a penny in their pocket. But if it succeeded, they wouldn't have to ever worry about money again. So the two men went off into the desert. I believe it was the deserts of California, but I don't really have any evidence of this. And Eccentric and Allen were about to test their device. Well, Eccentric stood there in the desert, and he looked out, and he said, "Oh, it's funny that it should be here. It was right here, Allen, when I was a boy, where I used to play. Right over there in those rocks. I used to play cowboys and Indians. And then over there, we used to have mud ball fights. Do you remember that, Allen?" And Allen said, "Oh, yes, that was a long time ago, wasn't it, old man?" And he hit Eccentric on the shoulder. "Yes," said Eccentric, "it was a long time ago." "Oh, sometimes I wish I could go back," he said. "Well," said Allen, "you know what they say. We can't go back. All we can do is make the most of what we have." "Yes," said Eccentric. "Too bad. Sometimes I wish this universe would just break its rules once. Just let us all just go back and maybe change things, maybe make things better." "Well, at any rate, is it all ready?" He nodded his head. Yeah, it should be." Eccentric, he looked over at the other men who were standing there. "All right, we're going to make it fly." And Eccentric, he walked over. "Allen, I was thinking about it. Perhaps we shouldn't do the experiment today." Allen walked over. "Why not?" Well, there's clouds all up in the sky," he said. And Allen, he looked up. "What, afraid of a thunderstorm or something?" "Well, yes," said Eccentric. "I mean, we wouldn't want any electricity to mess with this equipment or anything like that. We wouldn't want to risk it." Allen said, "Oh, there's only a few clouds up there. We'll be fine, Eccentric." Eccentric, he looked at Allen. "I just have a bad feeling. I don't know why." And Allen, he said, "Don't worry about it. It's just your imagination. You and I have never been superstitious people. We've always believed that everything has a reason to it." "Yes," said Eccentric, "and damn those reasons. Damn them all to hell." "Well, come on," said Eccentric. The two of them walked into their machine, and Eccentric sat down, and Alan sat down. As Eccentric sat down, he looked over at a picture of his wife, and his mind went back to her, their little dingy apartment, the cats running around outside. They could hear the screams of people out in the alleyways, and they didn't even want to imagine what those screams were. Most of their nights were sleepless, their children all grown up. And as Eccentric looked at the picture, Alan said, "All right, you ready?" Eccentric said, "Yes." "Turn the switch." Eccentric and Alan, he turned the switch, and Eccentric pressed a few buttons, and a bunch of numbers began to run across the screen. And the clock on the wall, it was just a little clock that was right into the wall, built right into the wall. It began to tick a little louder than Eccentric remembered it to tick, but he sat there and he said, "All right, let her rip." And Eccentric, he pulled the wheel, and Alan, he pulled another switch, and all at once they lifted up into the sky, just hovered upwards, and they began to fly up into the sky, and Eccentric and Alan were soon soaring, just like birds, just like they always wanted when they were kids. And Eccentric laughed, "By George, we've done it! We've done it, Alan!" And Alan, he began to laugh, and if they had had champagne, I'm sure they would have drank it, even if they were flying. But anyways, as Eccentric, he sat there, and he felt like this was the best moment of his life. He was a child again. All at once they felt a bump. And they weren't sure what the bump was, but it was just this big bump that shuddered the whole machine. And Alan, he looked at Eccentric. "What was that?" Eccentric said, "I don't know." And he began to press the radio, and he tried to call for his team down below, but no one would answer. And as Eccentric looked around, he realized that the sun was brighter, and the clouds seemed distant, and in fact the whole desert seemed almost different somehow. Not different in a way that you could notice, not different in a way like there's a bush or there's a rock out of place, but different as in a different place entirely. I don't know how best to describe it, but Eccentric and Alan felt this feeling, and as they flew, Alan, he said, "What should we do, Eccentric?" "I don't know," he said. "Just fly around. We need the crew if we're going to make a landing." Well, anyways, Eccentric and Alan flew around for a little while, and as they flew, Alan said, "Eccentric, look down there." And Eccentric, he looked, and he saw the whole town there below them. Their hometown, little town, was there, and Eccentric immediately noticed that it was different. It looked just like it had when they were kids. I don't believe it," said Eccentric. "That's the old schoolhouse." Alan, he looked over. "Yes, and there's the old general store." And Eccentric, he said, "My lord, Alan, you don't think." But just as they were thinking these thoughts, and just as they were becoming worried, suddenly they felt another big bump again. And all at once they seemed to be back. And the sun was where it used to be, and the clouds were where they had used to be. And Alan, he said, "Well, we're back, I suppose." And Eccentric said, Yes, pull the plane down," he said. Well, anyways, Alan, he did as Eccentric told him, and they landed the plane. "Where's the flying crew?" said Alan. "I don't know," said Eccentric. They both got out, and they looked around. "Well," said Eccentric, "just put some tarps over the plane, and we'll go into town and figure out what happened to the crew and where everything is." And Eccentric, he began to walk forward, and Alan said, "What do you suppose happened to him? We weren't in the air that long. It could have been more than 30 minutes. And Eccentric, he said, "Well, I don't know. Maybe there was an emergency or something." Anyways, Eccentric and Alan, they began to walk back. Well, soon enough they arrived in town, and as they walked, they began to notice immediately that something was different. For one thing, there was nobody on the streets. Everything was just sort of quiet. And as Eccentric and Alan looked around, Eccentric said, "Look!" And he pointed, and there seemed to be a red eye drawn on one of the brick walls. And Eccentric, he said, "I don't remember that being there." And Alan, he looked over. "Yes, and I don't remember so many security cameras in this place." As they were standing there, suddenly a soldier came up. "Halt! What are you all doing?" he said. "You know you're not supposed to be out in this town at this time." And Eccentric, he said, "Well," and he looked around. It was night, by the way. It took them a little while to get back to the town, and Eccentric, he said, Well, we apologize. We didn't know there was any curfew. We must have arrived in the wrong town. We're looking for Littleton. And the soldier said, well, that's where you are? And Egbert said, no, it couldn't be. And the man said, look, give me your names. And Egbert said, my name is James Eggbert, and this is Alan, Royce Allen. And Alan, he took his hand, and the soldier shaked it. Well, you should have just told me. I forgot. Forgive me. I know that you two are very much into our Majesty's work. And he said, well, you all just go about your merry way. I apologize for disturbing you. Egbert and Alan. And he walked away, and Egbert said, dear me. He looked over, and there on a sign was written the words, End of the World. Well, said Egbert, seems like it's the end of all world. Everything's topsy-turvy. And Egbert, he said, well, maybe if we get home, Alan, we'll be able to figure out what's going on here. Anyways, they walked back to their hotel, still in denial that anything could possibly be happening. And as they went up, they began to notice that the elevator was a little bit more luxurious than before. It was a glass elevator. And as they went up, they came to their room, and Egbert, he pulled out the key, and it just happened to work. Anyways, they walked in, and weren't they surprised to find that it was just this most luxurious room? There was a big picture on the wall. I believe it was one of Salvador Dali's. And a beautiful marble floor, and a beautiful chandelier. And as Egbert, he walked round, he said, Alan, this isn't our home. And just then a woman came out. Egbert immediately recognized it as his wife. Egbert, she said, and she ran over and gave him a hug. Oh, I'm glad to see you home, but you told me you weren't going to be home from Africa for another month now. And Egbert, he said, what? And he looked over at Alan. We weren't going to Africa. Oh, of course you were, she said. Well, you must have got home early. Here, I'll fix you some dinner. And she walked back, and Egbert said, Alan, I need to talk to you. And they walked over, and they looked out the window. Listen, Alan, something must have went wrong with the experiment. And Alan said, no, it's impossible. What do you think could have occurred? I don't know, said Egbert, but I was thinking about it. You know, it's said that sometimes in this universe things happen, and they don't make any sense. They just happen because they can. Alan, what if we were to have fallen into one of these occurrences? One of these instances when the universe made a mistake? And Alan, he said, oh, come on now. The universe doesn't make mistakes. Anyways, Alan began to laugh, but just at that moment, the wife came back in. Well, I've got some steak in the stove. Anyways, Egbert, he said, well, we've actually got to run. We've got to go back to the desert. There's something we need to get, he said. Oh, what are you talking about? Said Janice. Never you mind. I'll be back home soon. And he gave her a kiss, and as they were about to head to the door, all at once the door opened on its own. And there walked in Egbert and Alan, who had got back from Africa a little earlier than they had been expecting to. Anyways, these two different Egbert and Allens looked at these two new Egbert and Allens, and the one Egbert dropped his suitcase and yelled, By George! And suddenly the two Egbert and Allens from our story ran at the other two and tried to attack them. But these Egbert and Allens easily pushed them down, and the one Egbert said, Honey, I know what this must be. What is it? She said, and she was just, her eyes were wide, and she said, Oh, I'm frightened, Egbert. No, he said, these are spies. I bet you they're working for the Russians, he said. We'll call the police. They'll come here and they'll pick these men up. They must have been trying to infiltrate us, get some of our experiments or something. Anyways, that Egbert, he picked up a phone and he called the police. Listen to me, said Egbert. Where are you? We're a sort of you. Something's happened. We can't explain it. Something's gone wrong with the universe. And that Egbert said, You keep your mouth shut, spies. I know what you're trying to do. Kill our family, aren't you? Just because we make ourselves a living. Well, they'll throw you in the clink. They'll know what to do with you. They'll put the electric chair on you, the American way. And anyways, Egbert, he called the police, and the police arrived, and Egbert and Alan were sent to jail. And that is where we'll leave them until the next night. I'm not sure what's going to happen to them, do you? What is actually going on? What do you think? Anyways, let me know in the comments. And as always, sweet dreams and good night.